Welcome to Cooper Talk. I'm your host, Steve Cooper, and remember, I'm only as hip as my guest. And I tell you something, people. So I have the Android 5. I haven't upgraded to the Android 6. I think one of the reasons is because I have a cool case for my Android 5. Joanne was working a Special Olympics, volunteering for that, and she won a raffle, so I got this OtterBox. So I want to keep it because these things are like $60 for a good case. But my phone sends me this upgrade, and you have no choice but to take it. And it's very irritating because you get used to a certain phone, you get used to how your wallpaper looks. And so now I got this thing, I upgraded it, it took me like 15 or 20 minutes, and all my buttons are changed. So I'm sitting there when I go to use my calculator or whatever, or that, it looks different, and that's irritating. Then the other thing that irritates me is it lost all my remembering. I would check into certain things with my password. For some reason, now it's not saving them. So people, just tell the phone companies that they should be able to just let us upgrade our phone when we went. And our upgrading means when you buy a new phone. Anyway, I have a great guest today, very talented, and I saw we had mutual friends, and I saw what her webpage and who all these people should play for, and I've had drummers on and singers, and I've never had a violinist, and so to me this is very cool. And my guest is Eliza James. How you doing, Eliza?
Hey, I'm great.
So now, do you ever get upgrades on your phone? What kind of phone do you have?
I have an Apple phone. I'm an iPhone user.
And now, do they do? I know a while ago they'll just do upgrades for you, right?
They do. Yeah, I generally just use my phone until it dies, or the last one was stolen at the airport, and then I just get a new one.
Okay, so now I gotta ask you, because seriously, looking at your resume, you've had a fascinating career. And now, when did you want to start playing violin? Were you a little kid, or how'd you get into this whole music thing? And was violin your first choice?
Violin was my first choice. When I was really small, my parents took me to a concert, and there was a violinist playing, and I couldn't sit down in my seat. And I walked around the house and pretended I was playing the violin, and my parents were like, maybe we should get her one of those. And I had taken some mommy and me piano classes, and piano I loved. I've always loved music, but violin was really the instrument that spoke to me.
And now, what do you mean? What do you mean it spoke to you? It just jumped out at you and said, this is, you just saw it and were just like, oh my God, I need to play that.
Yeah, there was something about the violin that I just felt was my voice. And I love all instruments, but violin was definitely my first choice. And my parents never had to make me practice. I was always telling my little friends, oh, I'm sorry, I can't go to the movies with you because I have a concerto competition, or I was always really dedicated to it. And I think that's true with everyone who plays an instrument. Like, if you find the right one, if you find what you feel is your voice, it's never really work.
You're right. It's funny because I have a friend who plays guitar a lot. And we'd be like, hey, yeah, we're meeting at happy hour at 5. And he goes, oh, I'll be down at 6:15 because I want to practice for an hour. And it seems like, yeah, if you want to play it, it must just be, if you're good at it. So, if you're young and you pick up an instrument like me, I tried to play the guitar and I was awful. So I was like, I'm not picking this up. But for you, it was second nature to you, I guess.
Yeah. But it also, you don't sound good on the violin when you start. No one does. It's not possible. It's a very difficult instrument. And I think, my parents were really good at encouraging me and, encouraging the little steps along the way and the milestones that I made. And, it takes about 5 years to sound good on the instrument.
So how old were you when you started?
I was 3, almost 4.
Okay, so you were, really young. That's that's like stuff, we're just starting to get our first semblance of a memory back then of, now as we get older. So you started at a young age, and you said it took about 5 years. So around 9, figuring the time, did you just sit there? Were people noticing you were good? Because it takes a while, but and did you feel that you were good?
I felt like I think I always felt like I was good at it, like I wanted to be good at it. It was something that I was very driven to do. And I remember I got a new teacher when I was 9, and he was from the Curtis Institute in Philadelphia. And I remember having an interview with him before he would agree to give me lessons. And he sat me down and said in front of my mom, well, I don't teach children. And I was just like, why am I here? Okay,
Right.
you're kind of scary. And he said, but if you will practice 4 hours a day, I will teach you. Do you want to do this for the rest of your life? And at that moment, I had to make a decision.
At 9.
At 9. Yeah.
And
I did. And, it was really difficult. He was a really tough teacher, and I think he made me play scales for probably a year before I did any other kinds of music with him. But he really pushed me, and, I think I'm better for it.
now you said he was from Philadelphia. Where did you grow up?
I was born in England, and then my father is British. My mother's from New Jersey.
Where in New Jersey? I'm from New Jersey.
She's from Cherry Hill.
No way, I'm from Cherry Hill.
Oh, small world.
I graduated Cherry Hill East High School in 1982.
Oh, wow. I'm not sure what high school she went to, actually. But yeah, she was going to Cambridge in England and met my father. They were working in a homeless shelter in the East End of London, helping homeless people. And they met and had me. And then we moved to the States when I was very young, so I don't really have an accent. But I have my dad's side of the family lives in England still, so we go back and visit. And then my father, he moved us to Oklahoma, where he's a doctor and he has a private practice there. And I was taking lessons there, and I took lessons there for a long time. It's where I met the teacher from Curtis, actually, and played in the college orchestras there and the Oklahoma Symphonia. And I really got to a place where I needed more. I needed more than what was there.
Okay.
I had gone pretty much as far as I could go. And so I had a teacher from California that I had been studying with, and she said, well, hey, I need a nanny. And so when I was 15, I moved to California and was her nanny and lived in her house and took care of her kids in exchange for lessons, and been in California ever since.
That's amazing. Now, I mean, it's so weird how things happen like that. It turns out that it ends up gravitating to where you end up spending your life here.
Yeah.
Now, as a kid, when you're getting older, you're practicing. Was there any people that you could watch on TV or listen to that influenced you? Because so many musicians, they'll say, oh, like drummers will say, and I heard, Foreigner, certain song, and this as someone young and impressionable, and you're getting good at your craft. Was there people that you could look up to and you could say, I want to strive to be that person?
Yeah, in fact, when I was, how kids have, posters of their favorite actors or whatever on their walls? I had posters of my favorite composers and violinists.
Okay. Who were some of them?
So I really love Itzhak Perlman. He was really inspirational to me and still is to this day. One of the finest violinists that has ever lived. And Gil Shaham and... there's quite a few. When I was young, I gravitated towards Sarah Chang because she was the same age as me. And I loved her so much that I would practice my autograph, so to speak. I loved the font on the front of her CD. And so I made my autograph look like how they spelled her name.
Well, so you were aiming for big things.
I was always aiming for big things.
So now you come out to LA, and you're 15, and you're taking lessons. Are you getting out because you're in an area? Are you getting out to be able to play anywhere?
Well, not really at that time because I couldn't drive. And, living in LA, it's hard if you can't drive. But I was playing, my teacher taught at Azusa Pacific University, and I was playing in the college orchestra there and a quartet there. So I got plugged in with the classical scene pretty early. And then when I was accepted to the Cleveland Institute of Music for college, but when you get accepted to a conservatory, a lot of times what happens is you'll have a teacher, but that teacher's studio is sometimes full. So, and sometimes they don't take freshmen. So you have to study with a teaching assistant. And that was the case when I got accepted. So I decided that since I'd been studying with my teacher in LA, that I wanted to stay with her because it's really about your teacher and not so much where you go.
So you stay in LA, and so now what as you're getting 16, 7, and all that, what are your career objectives? Do you want to go play an orchestra, or what were your objectives and what were the goals that you wanted to attain in your 18, 19, early 20s?
They actually changed a lot. Initially, when I was very young, I thought, I'm going to be a classical soloist. That's my goal. And then as I got older, I started exploring different kinds of music and everything from swing to rock, jazz, whatever. And I started to sort of open my horizons, so to speak. And when I was out here, I started playing in bands, and I found that I really loved being in a smaller ensemble. I love playing in orchestras, don't get me wrong. There's nothing like it. There's nothing like playing Beethoven's Ninth with a choir and a full orchestra. It's just unbelievable. But I found that a lot of my experience in the classical world, it was very stressful. And I wasn't sure if that was the path that I wanted to take anymore. I love classical music and I will always play it. And it was just, it's probably the most stressful career you can have.
Well, I was going to say that because I bet there's a ton of competition, because it's not like, it's not like you can just sit there and form, classical bands. Bands, you can go, hey, you play the drums. Yeah, you play guitar. Okay, we got a band. But for that, there's probably just limited spots. And there's so many people that, we don't really think about it because you don't see it as much. But like when I was a kid in Cherry Hill, we had a great theater department. We had a great orchestra. We had a great band. Yeah. And there's so many back then, and I don't think people concentrate on music as much anymore in schools, which is sad. But I think when you're coming out, you've played for a long time. To get to the point of being your first chair in a high school, you've been playing since you were a young kid. And when you want to go beyond that, the competition must be cutthroat.
It is cutthroat, and I'm still in it, so to speak. I still play with orchestras and everything. And I think part of the reason that I decided to expand my horizons and do other kinds of music was partially the pressure of it all. You have to live a happy life. And I found that, by just focusing on classical music in that competitive atmosphere, I was really, really just a mess sometimes. It was just, it made me not like playing it because it was so stressful, and I never want to lose the love for it. So I was like, I'm going to just go with this and see what happens and start playing different kinds of music with different people and see, where I end up. And you have to be classically trained to be a successful violinist. Not so much fiddle player, but if you want to call yourself a real violinist, the music that was written for the instrument is classical.
Right.
So that's where all your technique comes from, and your training. So it's very important to always play classical music as a violinist.
So what was the reaction like when you start doing this breakaway? Because, I mean, you were very good classically, and you said you were stressing out, and, it wasn't happy. And that would stink because, as we say, the reason you play an instrument or you do music or you do comedy or you act is because you don't want to feel those normal stresses of a job. It's a thing. But so now, how are people's reactions to you when they heard you were branching off? Was it like, oh, I mean, it's because a lot of people weren't doing that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So how did people react to you?
Well, at first, my parents were a little bit stunned. Like, what is our daughter doing playing country music? Because I play everything. So, how do you go from Beethoven to country? And, you've had all this training. Are you just throwing it out the window? And it took a little bit, but I think that eventually they've come around, especially when I started playing with Burt Bacharach, and my parents were like, okay, this is great.
Right, of course.
But I think in any style of music, there are good artists, it's not that one style of music is better than another. You find the good artists within whatever style it is that you're playing. So that's always been my goal. I want to find the best people to play with because that also makes me a better player.
Now, when did you start looking for those people? Because, I mean, the people you've played with is amazing, but when did you really start branching out and trying to get work with different people? And what's it like for a violinist to get work? Because a lot of times people, don't associate, let's say rock and roll with a violin. I mean, for me, I do, because from Jungle Land with Springsteen, there's the violinist in the beginning, and, it's just a different thing. But how do you sit there and where did you know where to look? Because it's not like, hey, we're looking for a violinist. That doesn't happen. How did you start this career path and figuring who to hit up and go where? I mean, how did it all start?
I have always been a self-starter, and I have no problem just walking up to people and saying, hey, you need a violinist.
Okay.
So that's honestly what I did. I would go see bands perform, and really good bands, and I would say, hey, guess what? I think I could help you. I think I could make this really cool. And I would just talk my way in, And, networking is a huge part of being a freelance musician. You have to be a good networker. So and you have to always have a presence, especially in Los Angeles, which is a very out of sight, out of mind place. If you're gone for too long, then people forget about you.
Right.
And it helps now that we have, Facebook and we can do Skype calls and all that stuff. But you have to have a presence, and you have to always be connecting with people, and also, recommending people for things. I sort of have my MO is that, if somebody calls me for a job and they say, oh, I need 6 violas, 4 cellos, or whatever, I always offer up recommendations because I feel like what goes around comes around.
That's true. I mean, I think in this business, I always say everyone's on the same side. I mean, I do that with guests.
Yeah.
Someone sent me a message. They said, hey, can you get me this guy on my show? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, because what I do with my guests is, I talk to you for an hour, but when I had a studio, we became very close because you're in on one-on-one interaction. But you get to know somebody because it's an hour. But then I always think, well, you know what? I'll recommend them, and, if my friend can get some, a guest, and my guest who has become a friend can get some publicity, everyone's happy.
Yeah, exactly. And it's nice to work with your friends too. And I have a very wide circle of friends. I enjoy meeting new people and adding people to my circles. I feel like surrounding yourself with creative, interesting people is one of the best things you can do, because it elevates you. And so whenever I am asked for a recommendation, I try to bring that to the table. I'm like, look, I can elevate your gig as well. And, recommending the right people for jobs is really important.
Now, what was one of your first, what was one of your first gigs that you all of a sudden said, okay, man, I dig this. This is where I'm going to go. I'm going to be a freelancer. Because, it is probably scary as a freelancer. I know a lot of people, you don't know, who you're going to play with, but if you're good, you're always going to play. But when did this whole freelancing and just the amazing lists of musicians you played with, when did that start? Who was like the first gig you got that you were like, damn, this is cool?
Well, I think the first gig that I really remember was a TV gig, and I was like, I don't know, 5. And I was playing Christmas carols or something. I don't even remember the name of the show, to be honest. And I remember the host of the show interviewed me or asked me a couple of questions or something. And I said something about being a professional violinist. And I think at that point I realized, like, oh, wait, yeah, I'm a professional violinist.
Right.
And when I played in this great group that really nurtured me when I was young, the Ottawa Suzuki Strings. And they were based in Kansas, and the woman who runs the group, Alice Joy Lewis, is one of my heroes. She's amazing. And she put together this group of kids, and we were ambassadors for the state of Kansas. And we went to England and Australia and a whole bunch of places, and we would play concerts for other kids. And I think I realized how connected the world was, and that I just wanted to be a part of everything. I didn't want to just limit myself to one job. I was like, ooh, I could do lots of things. I could have lots of interesting experiences.
So now how, because you play different, you play, I just said country and stuff like that. How do you start learning something? Like I saw you played with Gagouche, which is Persian. I saw that you played. How do you sit there and attack that kind of music? Do you sit there and go, okay, I'm gonna listen to some Persian style music and see how I can fit in? I mean, how does that start? Because what's funny is no one even knows who Gagouche is. And the only reason I know is because I was walking by this one Armenian-owned pizza place right around the corner from me, and I saw a sign for Gagouche, and I asked the owner, he's a nice kid, I go, who's Gagouche? And he told me, and I guess she was playing at the Coliseum. This was a few years ago, not the Coliseum, the Forum. This was a few years ago. How do you target like something like that? Like, how do you start learning that kind of music? Because it is different.
It is. It's very different. And honestly, the first Persian gig that I ever did, I didn't know it was a Persian gig. I got hired. It was a corporate thing. I got hired. I was told, oh, it's going to be pop stuff with a DJ. And then I show up and it's all Persian stuff. And I'm like, oh crap. Like, I know nothing about this style of music, but I've always had a really good ear. It's one of my strengths, I think. And so I just listen. And, occasionally you're like, oops, that note didn't work.
Right.
Like, oh wait, quarter tones? Oh. And because the phrasing structure is totally different, and you just have to listen to it, and you just have to like really focus. And now, I mean, it's sort of second nature. I know the tunes. It is a little bit hard because I don't speak Farsi. So, when someone says, do you know this song? And you're like, I I don't even know how to pronounce it.
I have no idea.
that song.
I have no idea what you just said. I have no
Yeah, I
idea.
have no idea what you just said. Can you sing the melody for me? I can tell you.
But did you, was it very fulfilling to actually get to learn it then? Because as I said, it's not a big style of music, and to have that under your belt must have been a great feeling.
Yeah, once I got a handle on it, I started getting like tons and tons of Persian gigs, and now people call me all the time for that, and I feel like it's a weapon in my arsenal now. Which is good, and it's broadened my horizons. There's a lot of, and not just Persian music. There's a lot of different styles of Middle Eastern music in general, and I play a lot of Israeli music, and it's just sort of broadens your horizons and opens up the world to you. And there's so many styles of music in the world. You can never stop learning.
Now, how do you adapt when you go in to play with someone new and you don't really know them? Because you said someone calls you, or like you went to that gig, the corporate gig. How do you adapt quickly to people when you're playing? Because they all must have different styles. As I said, when you play so many different kinds of music, which you do, you're playing with sometimes I guess you show up with a band who have been playing for a while, and you show up. How do you adapt to that?
You really have to just listen. Listening is the most important skill you can have, I think, as a human and definitely as a musician. You need to, whenever I play with a new group, it's really important, you introduce yourself, you find out what they're about even before you get there. You do your homework, and you find out, and you ask questions, what would you like me to play? Like, this is, if I'm playing with a band and they're already established, I'm like, okay, so I'm not just going to walk in there and be like, hey, what's up, guys? I'm going to solo over everything. I'm going to walk in there and I'm going to say, okay, what are your ideas? Tell me where you'd like me to fit in. And then I go from there, and I then make it my own. I put my own twist on things, but I always ask questions, and I always make sure that I'm, just respectful that it's their music. So, you want to do what they want first, and then if they say, oh, just play whatever you want, you just have to be aware of what's going on. You don't want to, when you're soloing with a band, it's a conversation. It's like, you say something, I say something. Sometimes we say it together. Sometimes we joke around and we play off each other. So you have to figure out what your role is in the music.
Now, who were some of the bands you, in your beginning stages of your career, you started playing with that you were excited to play with? I mean, I'm sure we probably always excited to play because you love the instrument. But who was some of the bands that you played with in the beginning, and how did they find you?
Well, I played in a band in college. Gosh, I can't even remember the name of the band. Oh my gosh. I played in a band in college, and I met the guys, my freshman year, and they were like, hey, let's make some music together. So we ended up doing that, and then we played a couple of places around town and stuff. And then I played with this really great artist named Paul Chesney. He's like country meets Dr. Dre.
Okay.
And he was really, really fun. And he sort of let me explore country and the art of soloing with him. So that was really cool. And and then I got the call from Burt Bacharach when I was 23, and that changed my life.
Well, it must. I mean, you think, everybody, and I'll be honest, everybody knows who Burt Bacharach is, and if you don't, you might as well be sitting under
living under a rock.
Yeah, and I mean, he's played with Elvis Costello, and he's been relevant for years. how did they find you? I mean, and it's such a big star as you know, you said 23. Well, 23, I know I was getting out of college. If someone, you know, had called me and offered me some kind of job, I would have been like, oh my God, what was that like when you got the call?
It was pretty mind-blowing, actually. I had met his music director. He hired me for a session, and we became friends. And then about a year later, I got a call, and it's like, hello, this is Burt Bacharach for Eliza. And I was like, what?
You're like, whose friend is it? Who's playing a joke on me?
What? What's happening? Are you joking? And so Burt got on the phone, and he was like, hey, so I have this violin part that I just wrote. Can you come down to Ocean Way Studios and give it a listen? And I was in the car before I hung up the phone, because I lived right down the street from Ocean Way. And I got there, and I listened to it, and we talked for a while, and he was like, hey, so you want to play Vegas? And, you know, I didn't know, because he had never had a violinist in his self-contained band. He played with many, many, many orchestras, you know, before. But he had never, the self-contained band is a smaller group. We do like jazz festivals and stuff like that. And so I said yes, of course. And I did the gig in Vegas. And as he introduced me to the crowd, I still didn't know what was going on, really. I thought, oh, well, this is maybe just a one-off thing, you know. And he introduced me to the crowd, and he said, this is Eliza James. Doesn't she look lovely this evening? And like, what a nice introduction, you know? And then he said, she's our newest band member.
So this is just, you're just expecting, as you said, a one-off, and then he's saying our newest band member.
Yeah. In front of the crowd. And I was like, oh, wow, okay.
Now, where was it playing at? Where in Vegas?
We're at the Orleans in Vegas.
You know,
yeah, it's, you know, Vegas has changed a lot. I guess back in the day when all the greats used to perform there and have, you know, shows, they had a lot of showrooms. And now it's a lot of, you know, Cirque du Soleil kind of productions and stuff. So the days of the going to see, you know, Frank Sinatra in a showroom, those days are kind of gone. But there's still a few. But we played the Orleans a couple of times because they had a nice room like that. So
now, how nervous were you that first? I mean, when he brought you out, I mean, I know you must be excited, but and especially because you're a kid, you know. I mean, yeah. I mean, how terrified were you? I mean, you know, you got to sit there. I know you're good. You know, you're good at what you do. Else he wouldn't have asked you. But then you got to sit there and go, "Holy crap! You know, I'm coming on stage with Burt Bacharach." And then when he introduced you as this, not only a great feeling for you to play, but then when he introduced you as a new band member, I mean, how do you contain your emotions?
You know, I just sort of like had this frozen smile on my face, like, oh my God, don't jump up and down right now, just smile and wave. You know? It was amazing, and you know, I wasn't expecting it at all. I didn't know what to expect, so it kind of threw me off guard. So I think at first I was sort of stunned.
Now, what was your schedule like after that? I mean, first of all, I mean, I know you had said you had been overseas when you were a kid playing in front of kids, but what was it like now where it's like you're performing with a established legend and you're going to be, I mean, you must have sat there and thought, I'm going to just see the world at these most beautiful, you probably played in some beautiful concert halls as you toured the world.
Yeah. You know, it was amazing. And I remember the first time we went to Italy, I just, you know, you just pinch yourself. You're like, I'm really here. This is really happening to me. You know, you have to keep reminding yourself, it's not a dream. It's not a dream. You know, and I've played some incredible places that I just, whenever I have a rough day, close my eyes and take myself back there, you know?
What are some of the places, like just these concert halls, like in what cities, a few of them that just really stand out, like, and you sit there and go, you know, wow, look at this place and look what I'm doing. This is amazing. Are there certain few cities that you just sit there and if you get, you know, if their tour comes up and you get a chance to go back that you get really excited about?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, let's see. There was a place in Sicily called Taormina. And it was this Roman amphitheater overlooking the Mediterranean. And there are no words to describe how beautiful this place is.
And to be doing what you love, overlooking it must just be amazing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, in fact, the whole experience of going there, it was an amazing story. We were flying from Rome, where we had to connect through Rome to go to Sicily. And the Mount Etna, the volcano, erupted. And so we got stuck in Rome because they couldn't land the plane while there was, you know, volcanic ash flying through the air. So we get stuck in Rome, and eventually the next day we went to Sicily, and we get to our hotel, and as we're driving to the hotel, you can see the volcano erupting. And there's like ash in the air a little bit, and I get to my hotel, and I'm standing on the balcony, and I'm catching this volcanic ash in my hands.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was amazing. I was like, ooh, this doesn't happen very often to anyone, you know? And the next day, like, I just remember we're driving to the venue, and it's just, on one side there's a volcano erupting, on the other side there's this beautiful, the Mediterranean, and it was just the most incredible experience. And we're playing this amphitheater. And, you know, when you tour in Italy, the Italians, they love their food so much.
My girlfriend's Italian, and believe me, I know.
And for good reason, too, because it's the best food ever. And, you know, we went to sound check, and then we had some time to walk around this little town, these tiny little streets, and eat gelato. And I was, you know, writing in my journal overlooking the ocean, and it was just unbelievable. And we go to this restaurant, and there's, you know, they're making the food right in front of us, and it's so fresh. And, you know, we have this amazing band dinner, and then we play this incredible show. And just the entire day, I was just overwhelmed with how beautiful and amazing everything was. And I think, you know, it's moments like that in your life, you live for that, you know?
You know, you probably look back and said, you know what, practicing 4 hours a day was well worth it because what I'm doing.
It, you know? Maybe I didn't go to prom, but you know what? I went to Taormina, so I'm all good.
Exactly. So now, once you're working with Burt Bacharach, when the tour stops, how does it change your name in the industry? Because you must have, you know, now people must sit there and go, you know, Eliza, she plays with Burt Bacharach. It must have brought you up a game for other artists to sit there and want to start working with you.
Yeah, you know, it definitely did. I mean, Burt Bacharach will add to anyone's credibility, you know? And so I started working with a lot of different people, and I was also playing, you know, in the Young Musicians Foundation orchestra, debut orchestra. And so I had started making connections there, and then to add Burt to it, it really, really did help my career quite a bit, you know? And I guess I'm very blessed that I had that opportunity, because it's really hard you can be really, really, really talented, but if no one knows, you know, you're not going to work.
Right. Now, how did the Paul Anka gig come along? Another legend. I mean, how did that happen? I told my girlfriend, I said, wow. I said, my guest has to push back a little bit because she's talking to Paul Anka. I'm like, how cool is that? And it's not like she's saying, oh yeah, I got to talk to my landlord about a clogged pipe. I'm talking to Paul Anka. How did that come about? Did that come through Backrack? And how often do you tour with him and play with him?
Well, I got the call from Paul Anka's music director about 3.5 years ago. And I guess I had been recommended. He was working with a violinist, a good friend of mine, Christine Wu. He was working with her, and she was doing a lot of TV stuff and couldn't do the gig. So she recommended me, and then the music director looked me up and said, hey, do you want to play with us? And again, it was one of those things, like, I wasn't sure if I was subbing or if I was, just going to be on a couple of gigs. And then the first gig I did with him was a technology test thing for I don't even know. We were in a pit. We didn't even see anything that was happening on stage. But I do know we played My Way about 60 times in 2 days. Yeah. So I know that song really, really well.
Right.
So then after that, I wasn't sure what was going to happen. You just kind of like, okay, do a good job, and then see what happens after that. And then they called me and they're like, hey, can you go to Singapore with us? And so it was New Year's. So I went and played that big, it has a boat on top of it, the casino. I think it's the Sands Casino.
Okay.
And it's this giant casino. And it's in Singapore, all the architecture is really space-agey. And so it was really a cool experience to go and see this place. I had never been to Singapore before. And hang out with the band more and everything. And then after that gig, they were like, hey, here are the dates for January. So that's how that kind of happened. And I've, being with two legendary artists like Burt Bacharach and Paul Anka I really love my bosses, I respect them so much. You learn so much working with them, and you end up working with such great people too, because they hire the best.
Right.
So you're constantly surrounded by people who are great musicians, who have been on the road for a really long time, and you can really gain a lot of knowledge from them.
Now, have their tours ever coincided, and what would you do if they did?
They have occasionally conflicted. Not very often, actually, which is nice, because
it's perfect.
Yeah, it's perfect. I do have a couple of subs that that play for me when I can't. Because basically, as a freelancer, you take whoever books you first.
Right.
So, and it always works out, because I'm always upfront about stuff like that, and everyone is I'm very respectful of each artist that I work with, so.
Now you've played on some different scores of TVs and movies.
Yep.
Now, how did you get into that?
Well, another crazy story. I was in the airport coming back from a gig with Bacharach, and I was waiting for my bags at LAX, and a guy came up to me and he was like, hey, so you're a fiddle player? And we just started chatting, and he's like, oh, by the way, I'm an orchestrator. And he's like, do you have a card? So I gave him my card, didn't think anything of it. 3 weeks later, I got a call asking if I could play March of the Penguins. So, the rest is history. Once you start doing gigs like that, those are the hardest gigs to get, actually.
Why is that?
It's very, very competitive. And they pay really well. And there are guys in LA that have been, playing movie scores for 40, 50 years, and it's probably, aside from like getting a seat in, LA Phil or Chicago or, New York Philharmonic, aside from that, it's probably the hardest gig to get.
Now, you've done that a lot. Now, how so you've played award shows. How did you get to the award shows? Is that the same thing? Someone knows you and they say, come to this. And I know you've played on Jimmy Kimmel Live and stuff like that. How do you get those gigs?
Those gigs are pretty much word of mouth. There's a contractor. You meet different people who contract gigs like that. And, you have to, for the TV stuff, it's a lot of image. You have to not look a certain way, but, you know how it is. It's like, it's an entertainment business.
Right.
So.
It's the show business. We got a show
business. Yeah. So, and, a lot of, you have to be easy to work with for those gigs, because those gigs are a lot of hurry up and wait.
Okay.
You get to set and they're like, show up at 6 a.m, and you show up and you don't do anything until 11:30.
Oh, I know. I've done hand insert stuff, and you sit there and you go in, and it's like your call time's like 7 a.m. So you get there and you wait till like 3, and then they sit there, and your whole shoot, because they're just taking your hand doing an action. It takes 8 minutes, and you're like, couldn't you just started me off with this, and leave, because you're still getting paid the same.
Yeah, you're getting paid to sit around, but it's a lot of patience and just, knowing the right people, to be honest. That's half the battle in this town is knowing the right people and being easy to work with. And there are certain things like, I've done gigs where I've been told, because I have blonde hair, and I've been told, well, they don't really want to use any blondes. So I got a brunette wig.
Okay.
You got to work with people.
Yeah, you got to. It's a business. You got to do certain things. I mean, you're not going to go and dye your hair, but you get a wig, and that's fine.
Yeah, I'll have any color hair you want me to have. If you want me to have pink hair, I'll have pink hair. Whatever.
Now, do you ever get tired of the road? I mean, or is it not as much? I mean, how often will you go out on the road with Bert and Paul? Look at me, I'm using their first names like I know them. Yeah, how do you go with Bert and Paul? How often a year do you go out with the road for them? And how long do the tours last? And do you ever get, I'm sure it's, after a while, it's a city after city, and they all start to blend together.
It is exhausting, but I think because I started touring when I was so young, like, it's just normal to me. It's weird. I get antsy if I'm not on a plane.
Okay.
Somewhere. I'm like, wait, I haven't flown anywhere in like a month. What's going on? And you just get used to it. And I love being in a different city every night or every couple nights. I love exploring different places, and I'm always the person I get to the hotel. I'm like, okay, we're in a cool place. All right, drop the bags. Call somebody.
Right.
Call anyone you know in this town. Let's go have fun.
That's good though. Now I can say actually also I saw on your on your webpage, which people it is ElizaJamesMusic.com. I saw that you've played like at the Grove at the Christmas show.
Yeah.
Now, how great? Because I'm like a sap for Christmas. I love the specials. I love the music.
Yeah.
How cool is it to sit there and play, and where everybody's probably just appreciating it, and it must make you just feel so holiday-ish.
Yeah, it was great. That gig was, I think, that was the first time, because when you do a gig that's outside like that, that was with the Debut Orchestra and Burt Bacharach. And when you do a gig that's outside like that, a lot of times they will do pre-record in the studio.
Okay.
Especially when there's a lot of moving parts. When you have multiple artists on one stage and you've got to move, 30 people before the next commercial break. So they'll do a pre-record, and then the group on stage will be mic'd and also playing to themselves. so that it can be timed with TV and all that, and the sound mix can be right and everything. So they're playing over themselves, but there's also a recording underneath.
Right, my friend. You probably do you know Rich Redmond?
Yeah.
Well,
totally.
Rich said the same thing on they put like things in their drums when they do an award show for the same reason. You're playing, but in case something happens, it works out.
Right, exactly. And, because you never know, and there's so many things happening at those shows at the same time. It takes a little bit of the nerve-wracking part of it out. But yeah, so that gig, we had done the pre-record the day before at Capitol Records, and I was concertmaster of the string section, and it was session. And Studio A, and I have to say that was pretty amazing. that
Right.
was like one of those moments, like I still have in my violin case, I have stickers on the back of it, and I still have the little Capitol Studio A name tag sticker.
So that's big stuff.
That was a big deal. And that was a really cool concert. Also because, it was a huge audience. The Grove is a big place, and it was at capacity. They had the fire marshals. They weren't allowed to let anyone else in.
So how many violins do you have?
I have my good acoustic violin, and then I have a 5-string electric violin, and I have my playing outside and or in bars violin.
And now, where do you keep them? Do you have them all cased up in a like a locked up area, because they're probably like your babies? They're like
they are definitely. I keep them in a place that's not too humid, that doesn't get too cold or too hot. It's pretty temperate, and they all are in protective cases for sure.
Now, when you travel with them, do they let you take them on the plane as carry-on?
Usually I only travel with one violin at a time. So, and I definitely always take it as a carry-on. I've, had a few times people have given me problems about it. But there's actually a letter that the musicians union, they published this letter, and because there's a federal law that you can take violin on a plane, because it's an irreplaceable
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
Not like they make every violin that's made is handmade and different.
So what's the waiting process? Like, if you wanted to get a new violin, and you get it handmade, it's not like you're going to, you could go to a thrift shop, but I'm not a thrift shop, but like a pawn shop you see on TV and stuff. But now, how long does a violin, like, if you want to get a new violin, do you have a certain person you go to and you're going to have to wait because there's probably a backlog?
Well, honestly, when you want to get a new violin, a lot of times you don't buy a new violin.
Okay.
Because my good violin was made in 1920.
Oh, wow.
And there's older violins have had a chance. The wood matures, and that's why Stradivarius and Amatis and Guarneris. That one of the reasons that they're such good instruments is because they, they've had many, many, many years to absorb the vibration from people playing them. The more a violin is played, the better it becomes.
Okay, that makes sense. So now these days, and I've seen you, we're friends on Facebook, and I've seen you, you do the Lucky Strike every once in a while, or the whiskey. Mm-hmm. Now, how does that come about? And like, how do they decide what songs you're going to play on? And do you sit there, or do you call them and go, hey, I want to come down and play, like, I know like Brian Tichy's doing Led Zeppelin at tonight. But how does that come about? That they just said, hey, come down because you know all these musicians?
Actually, Jonathan Moffett, the drummer for Michael Jackson, I went to a jam session and he was there, and I was, I'd been on the road a lot, and I was trying to sort of go out and meet more people and, get different kinds of gigs and just have more of a presence in town. And so I ended up at this jam session at the Viper Room, and he was there, and we started talking, and he's like, I heard about there's this great jam at Lucky Strike. You should come check it out. And I knew nothing about it. And I just walked in, and I had my instrument, and I just walked in, and I knew so many people there already. I kept running into friends, and it was like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you in so long. And, it's like cheers.
Right.
And then I found out, like, oh, well, you should talk to this guy. At the time, it was Chuck Wright who was running it. This was like a year ago. And so they were like, okay, talk to him. And I talked to him, and at first he was like, well, we had a violinist once before, but it didn't really work out. Let's see, whatever. So he put me on, and then it was just like, oh, you can really play. Okay.
And you're like, yeah, does the name Burt Bacharach of Paul Anka mean anything?
Yeah, but,
I know.
It can be, I understand the skepticism, though, because, violin is not these are rockers, and violin is not like their first thought when they're like, oh, we're going to have a rock jam session, It's like, oh, well, she can jam. And also because I can improvise and it's definitely a skill to be able to improvise. You have to work on it constantly, and you get better the more you do it. And a lot of, when you're growing up learning classical music, you're taught to read what's on the page. And so for a lot of people who come from classical backgrounds, improvising can be a very scary thing because you don't have a page.
Right.
And you kind of have to get over that fear of, oh my gosh, what am I going to play? And just let your ears do what they do.
We're running out of time. I just want to know now where are you going next? Are you going out are you going out on the road with Paul or Bert soon?
I'm out with Paul we leave for Hong Kong on the 21st.
Wow.
And then I get back on the 25th. And on the 28th, I go to Austria, Vienna, with Bacharach. And then we're playing a jazz festival in Vienna. And then we go to the UK and we do the Love Supreme Festival. And I think just outside of London. And then we do Royal Festival Hall with Joss Stone. And then we have another jazz festival after that, and then Monte Carlo, Copenhagen, and Reykjavik.
Wow. I mean, you guys sit there and go, man, when you picked up that violin when you were 3, you must have sat there and went, I mean, if you could look back as a 3-year-old and see all the places you play, I mean, it just must be astonishing.
It's pretty amazing. Like, I got a new passport recently. Mine expired, and I was looking through my old passport, and I'm like, wow. My life in a little book,
But I want to thank you for coming on. This was fun. I was excited because I saw and I was like, I got to get her on the show because it's just your musical lineage and just playing. So how do people get in touch with you? Do you tweet?
I do tweet. My Twitter is at ElizaJamesVLN. And that's also my Instagram. And I have Eliza James Music. On Facebook, it's Facebook/Eliza James Music or Eliza James VLN. There's many ways.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on. And,
thanks for having me.
And people, please check her out. Follow her on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter, at Cooper Talk. That's at Cooper Talk. You can also go to my website. I have 520. I'll put number 520 up tonight. 520 episodes up there. A lot of people have played at Lucky Strike are in there too. So if you like musicians, I've had a bunch of them. So go to coopertalk.net. Also, if you want to email me, cooper@coopertalk.net. Instagram, CooperTalk1. Words with Friends. I'll play you back. CooperTalk1. Also, my other website, stopthesalt.com. It was 4 years ago when I had my heart condition, and I've gotten better, and it was from eating healthy. So it's 120 easy recipes, low sodium, no pictures to get you intimidated. No big list of ingredients, just easy cooking. Get that. It's you can get it at Barnes & Noble or Amazon.com. Buy it from me. I make more money. So go to StopTheSalt.com. Follow me at Cooper Talk. Google Eliza James. Go to her website. Keep listening to music. Keep listening to my show. I'm Steve Cooper. I'm only as hip as my guests. Don't forget, drink your water, eat your vegetables, take your vitamins, and I will talk to you guys next week.